Hi everyone, this is just a very short video discussing why it is important to rate the importance of outcomes in guideline development and their utility, and why we're asking you to fill out these surveys. So when we make recommendations in guidelines, we want to make sure that we are considering results for outcomes that are deemed the most important for decision making. And these are the outcomes that are deemed the most important for decision making by people with lived experience, clinicians, policymakers, and others working in the space. We want to make sure that this judgment is made by the community and not by a technical team or the researchers such as us. So we need your help to help us distinguish between what are the most critical outcomes for decision making compared to those outcomes that are important but not critical, and the outcomes which are not as important. This is a really important step in guideline development, because as we look at the research, we'll see that for many of the interventions, treatments, procedures, etc., that we are assessing, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of outcomes which have been evaluated. And we want to make sure that the recommendations that we make together are based on results for critical outcomes, not outcomes which are of little importance. By doing this and by getting your feedback, we'll make sure this is a very transparent and patient-centered guideline development effort. And it will also mean we are focusing on the most critical outcomes as opposed to the less meaningful ones. I thought I would give you an example from a previous guideline. So this is the European Academy of Neurology guideline on the management of ALS. And you can see here the question: what is the clinical and cost effectiveness of cough augmentation techniques for people with MND who have an ineffective cough? And the outcomes that were deemed critical in this guideline were survival, health-related quality of life, and then some of these patient or carer reported outcomes. And then these other outcomes were deemed important but not critical. So when the recommendation was made in this guideline, they really focused on these critical outcomes here, as opposed to the outcomes that were just deemed important. To help you do this, we'll be including health outcome descriptors within our survey, which basically provide a standard format for how we describe and explain a health outcome. And this is meant to help you when you make your judgments about the importance and utility of the outcome. So here's just a real life example. You're probably familiar with now as well, we'll be using something called the evidence to decision framework to underpin recommendations. And one of the criteria in the evidence to decision framework is these values of the outcomes. To actually provide a quantitative measure of the value that people place on different outcomes, it's important, of course, to determine their importance in terms of what's critical compared to what's important, or those that are not important. But it's also very helpful to express this as a health utility. A health utility is basically a score that you can give an outcome ranging from 0 to 1, where 0 represents mortality and 1 represents perfect health. And for different health states, you may be somewhere between this value of 0 and 1. For example, if you're in a health state which you believe is obviously not perfect health, but not death, so it might be what you might consider half of perfect health, you would be at a health state of 0.5. The way this information is normally developed, there are lots of different health utility type studies, and we reviewed these studies in our systematic review of values and preferences. So we do actually have a lot of this information already, but not for every single outcome. And what we really would like to get is actually this rating of a health utility from the people involved in our guideline, particularly the people from the Lived Experience Advisory Group. But of course, we also want to hear from everyone else as well. This is very helpful for the guideline because it will show us how different outcomes may have different levels of utility, and this can help us help inform our recommendations, particularly when we are seeing different results or results going in different directions. So from beneficial effects to harmful effects. And then by using these health utilities, we'll actually be able to see what people place more value on. They can also help inform judgments regarding the results needed to determine a small, moderate, or large effect as well. So in this survey, you'll be asked to read all of the health outcome descriptors and then provide some feedback. If you have any feedback or suggestions for us, we always, of course, want to hear your feedback and suggestions. And then we'll be asking you to rate the importance of the outcomes from forming a recommendation on a scale of 1 to 9. Importantly, this is a rating, not a ranking. So you can rate multiple outcomes, of course, at a level 9 or a level 8 or a level 7. But we do obviously need to distinguish between the different outcomes in terms of their importance. So try to use the full scale if you can. We'll also be asking you to specify health utility on a scale of 0 to 100 as well. So remember, with 0 being death, and 1 being perfect health, or 100 in this case being perfect health. We'll be doing this per topic for the guideline, as we acknowledge that that the outcomes that are being assessed and their importance may change depending on the actual topic or question we're looking at. The utility itself, though, should be consistent. Thank you as always for your time. And if you have any questions, please contact myself or the team. Thank you.